Go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Miss Brown. I am an art teacher here at Mather High School, and also I sponsor the art club with Mrs. Wright. So I'm here to show you some things about clay and talk about some of the clay that we have. We generally work with red clay, which is here, and gray clay here. The red clay we do mostly for hand building. This is an example of a fresh batch of clay that we got from one of our boxes. And if I open this up, you can see it comes in kind of a cube, rectangular kind of form. And we use this when we're working with forming the clay from our hands. Sometimes we'll roll out a slab and put it inside a bowl. Other times we'll use a coil and pinch pot technique, and we will show you those later on. These were all made on the potter's wheel. And we use the gray clay, which turns white when it's fired, for the potter's wheel. This is a fresh cube of gray clay. The gray clay is softer, it's a little easier on your hands. When you're working on the wheel, it doesn't rough up your hands as much as the red clay. So we prefer the gray clay for the wheel. This was made on the potter's wheel, as was this vase, and this vase as well. You can hand build with the gray clay, but it tends to be a little weaker. It's not as strong. This particular red clay, or terracotta clay, has a substance in it called grog, which is almost like little pieces of stone clay that's already gone through our kiln. And those little pieces of grog help to make this clay stand up a little more easily, and it makes it also less likely to explode in the kiln when it gets fired. And we'll talk all about that, those processes later. But these were all made by not using the potter's wheel, but by actually forming the clay with hands. And these are some student works, and then this is one of Mrs. Wright's of candle votive works. And again, these were all made by just using your hands and clay rather than using the potter's wheel. In here we have two bins in the room. One is for red clay and one is for white clay. This is where we generally put scraps of clay we can reuse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to wedge from some clay that's already been in here, rather than using the fresh clay. And I'm going to demonstrate wedging in a minute. But these are, again, this is where we keep scraps of clay or unused pieces that are still wet. So, Elizabeth, Mrs. Wright, I'm going to take some clay out of our red bin here. And what I've done is I've made sure that I had a red cloth on the table to protect the table, and also we have some cloths for the white clay and some for the red. We want to make sure we use the same one, please. I'm going to bring this over here. And this is just a big mound of clay. Some of it might be a little more wet and some might be a little bit more dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to what you call wedge, which means to almost like kneading the clay and incorporating those different consistencies together. I just used the cutting tool. I wrapped it like this, held it, and pulled it through. I'll do it again so you can see. And this got off a chunk of clay for me to work from. You can see there's some air bubbles here. The purpose of wedging is to eliminate those, because we do not want air bubbles in our clay pieces, because when we go to put them in the kiln, which is a very, very hot oven type of thing, we don't want to have air inside the pieces because when it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, the air doesn't have anywhere to go, and then it could actually make your clay pieces explode and ruin your piece and others as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two different types of wedging techniques. One is the spiral wedge, which is where I keep my left hand, if I'm right-handed, steady and turn with my right. So I'm creating a kind of spiral form here, or rotation.
How many times do you rotate it?
Some people will say you want to do it about 100 times, and then others have said 50. To double check, what you can do is you can cut open what you have wedged to see if there are any air bubbles. Now that won't tell you that there might be another one somewhere else in the piece, but
what is
it can give you a general idea, or in the yes, you have another question?
What is the other type of wedging technique called?
The other type of wedging technique is ram's head, generally, that we use. I just want to show you, once I get this kind of incorporated, I'm working with a very large piece. In art club, you'll probably work with smaller sizes, although it's not bad to start large like this, because then you could cut whatever you prepare to use for multiple clay projects. And I'll just show you. This is, eventually it's kind of almost looks like a, I'm not done yet, but it's starting to look like one of those conch shells almost. I can also slap it down, and I'll show you the ram's head method. Ram's head method is you have the clay in front of you, and what you want to do is you're pushing and turning and pushing and turning. I can tell that I might need to cut this open and just kind of mix it up a little bit more, but you end up with something that almost looks like a ram.
It looks like an elephant head.
The horns here on the side. That's another technique. What I don't want to see students doing is slapping it and making it flat like a pancake, and then folding it. Because what you do when you do that is you add more water to the clay. You add more air, to the clay. I'm going to take this and open it up, and you can see there's a little bit of a break here, but this is pretty smooth. I don't see air bubbles. This is a good size for students to work with when they're starting to make a bowl. Can handle it a little bit more easily. You want to do this standing up. What I have is I have my right foot a little bit further in front of my left foot. If you're right-handed, you kind of take that same stance.
Does wedging make the clay dry out a little bit?
It can, so sometimes you have to add water to it. This particular piece of clay that I have here was pretty wet to begin with. And again, another ram's head. It's not a bad idea to wrap your clay up in a little plastic, or just keep it covered until you're ready to use it. Because yes, this type of clay will dry out. There are different types of clay that people can work with. The kind that we use for ceramics has a lot of water in it. So I'm going to do a little bit more of spiral wedging here. don't know if you want to get a close up, Mrs. Wright. Just
I'll
see.
try.
It might be actually better from like over my shoulder to see kind of what I'm doing here when I press and turn. And you can see that that piece gets
Are you working up a sweat?
yeah, it's good exercise. You can feel it in your arms. Sometimes this cloth crinkles up on you a little bit. This feels pretty well incorporated. What I want to do is I want to kind of get rid of creases when I start to form it into and this is another, when you slap the clay down like this, you're also compressing it more too. And if I were going to make a bowl or work from a slab technique, I would use this kind of method here. And that's probably pretty good. I can start showing the slab technique. Oops. Should I do that then? Yeah.